To her, it wouldn't.
They're scattered all the way from Oregon to Nova Scotia. You mean you actually want her to make...
Do you ever wonder what strange little secrets were hiding behind the charm of the Andy Griffith Show? For years, that small-town world of Mayberry felt like comfort itself, simple, kind, and always familiar. But beneath all that sweetness, what odd truths were quietly waiting to be found? Barney Fife's single bullet tucked into his shirt pocket became one of the most iconic gags in television history, but it started for a very practical reason: money. During early production, the studio was cutting corners wherever it could, and that meant fewer props, even bullets. Instead of giving the Mayberry deputy a full belt of ammunition, writers turned the restriction into a joke that perfectly fit his character. Barney was overzealous, anxious to prove himself, and always a step away from disaster. Giving him only one bullet became a safety measure for both the town of Mayberry and the audience's laughter. The bit took off immediately, becoming one of the most repeated running jokes on the show. Don Knotts leaned into it brilliantly, treating that single bullet like both a symbol of authority and a potential catastrophe. Behind the humor, the gag revealed something deeper about the Andy Griffith Show. It was built on clever writing that turned small limitations into timeless comedy. What could have been a forgettable side detail became a defining trait of one of television's funniest characters. Even today, fans remember that one bullet more than anything else, proof that sometimes a budget cut can accidentally make television gold. On screen, Aunt Bee was the gentle heart of Mayberry, a steady presence of warmth and wisdom. Off-screen, however, Frances Bavier was known for being far less easygoing. Though fans loved her chemistry with Andy Griffith, behind the scenes their relationship was famously strained. Bavier reportedly found Griffith's laid-back style and constant jokes unprofessional, preferring a more serious approach to acting. Griffith, in turn, admitted later that he might have teased her too much, saying he always respected her talent even if they never quite connected personally. The tension between them was subtle but noticeable to those on set. While Griffith and Don Knotts were laughing between takes, Bavier often kept to herself, maintaining the same level of discipline she brought to her character. Yet, her performance remained flawless, warm, maternal, and utterly believable. In the end, it was that professionalism that made Aunt Bee so iconic. Years later, Griffith tried to reconcile with Bavier before she passed, and by most accounts, she accepted his apology. Their uneasy friendship added a layer of complexity to Mayberry's wholesome image, a reminder that even in the friendliest small town, not everyone always got along. Still, their on-screen magic made audiences believe in something sweeter, and that illusion is what kept the Andy Griffith Show timeless. That carefree whistle that opens every episode of The Andy Griffith Show, as Andy and young Opie stroll to the fishing hole, feels like pure Americana. But here's the twist. Little Ron Howard couldn't actually whistle. The now famous tune, composed by Earl Hagen, needed a pitch-perfect whistle to set the tone, so Hagen decided to perform it himself. What audiences heard wasn't a child's innocent melody, but a professional musician's precise, airy tune. It became one of the most recognizable openings in television history, perfectly capturing the show's charm and simplicity. Ironically, Ron Howard later said he practiced for weeks trying to imitate that whistle, but could never get it right. The scene itself, filmed with Ron tossing a rock into the pond beside his on-screen dad, was all about capturing that small-town peace, the sound of a world without noise or hurry. Few realized that behind that sense of ease was careful studio craftsmanship. It is funny how something as simple as a whistle could become so iconic that entire generations can hum it from memory. Even today, that melody instantly takes people back to Mayberry, where life moved slower and problems seemed smaller. And it all started with a man who could whistle on cue when a kid actor couldn't. Andy Griffith always believed Mayberry should feel like a real place, not a stage filled with punchlines. When the Andy Griffith Show began production, he wanted to skip the laugh track entirely, arguing that the quiet humor of small-town life worked best without an audience's prompting. Griffith thought that forced laughter would cheapen the show's charm, but CBS executives disagreed. At the time, nearly every sitcom relied on laugh tracks, and networks feared viewers would find silence awkward. In the end, Griffith had to compromise. The show included a laugh track, though it was used sparingly compared to other comedies of the era. The result was a gentler rhythm, humor that breathed rather than barked. It let the show's wit come from characters and timing, not cues. Still, the few moments of audience laughter that did remain helped The Andy Griffith Show fit comfortably into primetime television without losing its authenticity. Years later, Griffith admitted the network might have been right, saying the laughter gave the show a rhythm people were used to hearing. Yet, even with that concession, The Andy Griffith Show kept its small-town soul intact, proving that true comedy doesn't need a full crowd to feel alive. While Andy Taylor was calm and fatherly on screen, Andy Griffith off-screen had a mischievous streak. He loved pulling pranks, especially on Don Knotts, whose nervous energy made him the perfect target. Between takes, Griffith would swap props, improvise unexpected lines, or sneak up behind Knotts to make him jump just before action. The laughter that erupted afterward kept the mood light and helped everyone stay loose during long shooting days. The show's tone, warm, funny, and human, owed much to that behind-the-scenes camaraderie. Griffith believed laughter on set led to better performances, and his playful humor proved him right. Even when scripts called for serious moments, the actors trusted one another completely, knowing Andy would always bring the fun back around. Other cast members like Ron Howard remembered the set as one big family that loved to laugh, with Andy as the ringleader. His pranks were never cruel, just a reminder not to take themselves too seriously, even while filming a show destined to become legendary. In an era of polished Hollywood productions, The Andy Griffith Show stood apart because it was filled with genuine joy. The smiles you saw on screen weren't just acting, they were the real thing. Sometimes television magic begins with a phone call. After seeing the pilot episode of The Andy Griffith Show, Don Knotts called Andy Griffith directly. They had worked together years earlier on Broadway's No Time for Sergeants, and Knotts thought Andy's new show could use a deputy. Griffith agreed instantly. There was no formal audition, no elaborate deal, just two friends trusting their instincts. Knotts joined without a long-term contract, expecting it to be a short stint. Instead, his portrayal of Barney Fife became one of television's greatest comedic performances. The chemistry between Griffith's straight-man calm and Knotts' jittery energy was lightning in a bottle. Barney's insecurity, exaggerated pride, and chaotic dedication to law and order gave the series its heartbeat. As the show gained popularity, Knotts was finally signed as a regular, earning multiple Emmy Awards for his role. Griffith often said that Don Knotts was the funniest man alive, and their friendship carried the show's humor with ease. What began as an informal conversation became a defining partnership in American television. Sometimes it really is that simple: a good idea, a trusted friend, and perfect timing. When The Andy Griffith Show first began, the writers had a simple way to explain why Sheriff Andy Taylor tolerated Deputy Barney Fife's endless blunders. They were cousins. Early scripts even included passing references to their family connection, hinting that Barney's job was a favor from Andy rather than a professional decision. But as the series developed, writers realized the joke worked better without that explanation. They quietly removed any mention of the family link, never addressing it again. From that point on, Andy and Barney's relationship became one of friendship and mentorship instead of kinship. The change allowed their chemistry to shine more naturally. Andy's patience contrasting with Barney's nervous enthusiasm without family obligation muddying it. Interestingly, some longtime fans still insist on the cousin theory, treating it as part of the show's unofficial lore. The shift might have been subtle, but it transformed the heart of the series. Andy and Barney became the ultimate small-town duo, a steady sheriff and a well-meaning sidekick whose loyalty always outweighed his mistakes. Sometimes letting go of backstory makes characters feel more real, and in Mayberry, friendship turned out to be a stronger bond than family ties. During one of the show's rare on-location shoots, the crew got a surprise no one could have scripted. While filming a jailhouse scene near an actual correctional facility, an inmate from the nearby jail yard somehow wandered onto the set. Dressed similarly to the extras, he blended right in at first, chatting casually with the actors as they prepared for the next take. The director assumed he was part of the crew until someone noticed he wasn't wearing studio ID. After a few awkward moments, the truth came out, and the real deputies stepped in to escort him back. Andy Griffith reportedly found the entire situation hilarious and later joked that it was the most realistic performance they had ever filmed. The story became one of those legendary behind-the-scenes tales that perfectly captured the show's blend of humor and authenticity. The Andy Griffith Show thrived on creating a believable small-town world, but this was one time reality blended a little too well with fiction. It was an honest mistake that no one forgot, and probably the only time Mayberry's jail ever had a real inmate. Andy Griffith's calm charm and understated delivery made him the perfect small-town sheriff, but much of that charm came from improvisation. Griffith had a gift for making dialogue sound effortless, often slipping in off-the-cuff remarks that the writers never planned. Rather than sticking strictly to the script, he treated scenes like conversations, reacting naturally to Don Knotts, Ron Howard, or whoever shared the frame. Many of his funniest or most touching moments were completely spontaneous. His ad-libs were so good that editors frequently kept them in the final cut, realizing they added authenticity and warmth to Mayberry's world. Griffith understood that comedy worked best when it felt real, not rehearsed. Even when he wasn't joking, his timing gave every line a gentle rhythm that made the dialogue feel lived in. Co-stars often credited him with setting the tone for the show, relaxed, kind, and believable. In a television era dominated by canned laughter and rigid scripts, Griffith's improvisation helped the Andy Griffith Show stand out as something genuinely human. It proved that sometimes the best performances aren't written, they're felt. Mayberry wasn't just a creation of Hollywood writers, it was a reflection of Andy Griffith's real life. The fictional town drew inspiration from his hometown of Mount Airy, North Carolina, and no character embodied that connection more than Floyd the barber. Played by Howard McNear, Floyd was a gentle, talkative barber whose shop became the social hub of Mayberry. He loved to gossip, dispense advice, and occasionally drift off mid-conversation. Griffith once revealed that Floyd was loosely based on a real barber from Mount Airy named Russell Hyatt, who ran a shop so similar that fans still visit it today. Hyatt embraced the connection, welcoming visitors from across the country who wanted to sit in Floyd's chair. In a way, the character became a tribute to every small-town barber, the kind who knew everyone's name and could fix more than just your hair. McNear's portrayal gave the show a sense of familiarity and comfort, grounding its humor in everyday life. Even after McNear suffered health problems, the production team went out of its way to keep him involved, often filming him seated to accommodate his condition. Floyd's easy warmth made Mayberry feel like home, and his roots in real life made the illusion even stronger. In an era when television sheriffs were quick to draw their guns, Andy Griffith decided to do something different. As Sheriff Andy Taylor, he rarely, if ever, carried a firearm. Griffith believed the character's strength came from his wisdom and compassion, not intimidation. He wanted Mayberry to represent a world where problems could be solved with empathy and patience rather than violence. It was a quiet but radical choice for 1960s television, especially when Westerns dominated the airwaves. Sheriff Taylor used reason, humor, and respect to keep order, relying on his humanity instead of a badge and a gun. This philosophy turned the Andy Griffith Show into something timeless, a comforting reflection of decency during an era of cultural upheaval. The idea of a lawman who led by example rather than force resonated deeply with audiences, many of whom saw Andy as the kind of person they wished led their own towns. That gunless image became part of television history, reminding viewers that true strength doesn't always need to be loud or armed. Andy Taylor proved that integrity, not intimidation, is what keeps the peace. One of the longest-running mysteries in the Andy Griffith Show was simple but deliberate. Where exactly was Mayberry? The show never identified the state, leaving it open-ended for audiences across the country to imagine it as their own small town. That universality was no accident. The writers avoided mentioning a specific location so viewers in Kansas, Ohio, or Georgia could all feel like Mayberry was just down the road. Still, there were clues. Mentions of nearby Raleigh and Mount Pilot strongly suggested North Carolina, the real-life roots of Andy Griffith's hometown, Mount Airy. Fans, however, loved debating it, treating Mayberry like a shared piece of Americana rather than one specific place. The setting became a kind of emotional geography, representing the ideal small-town values that people longed for during the 1960s. It wasn't about where Mayberry was, it was about what it stood for. In a world growing more complicated, Mayberry's vague location helped it feel both familiar and magical, a safe haven from the real world. Andy Griffith once said, "Mayberry is where you go in your heart when the world gets too hard." For millions of fans, that was exactly true. Otis Campbell, Mayberry's lovable town drunk, was a character fans adored for his harmless antics and good heart. But the irony behind the role is that actor Hal Smith, who played Otis, never drank a drop of alcohol in his life. Off-screen, he was a devout Christian, active in his church, and known for his kindness and professionalism. On screen, though, he transformed into the stumbling but gentle man who regularly locked himself in the Mayberry jail to sleep it off. The performance was so convincing that many viewers assumed he was playing himself, but Smith approached the character with care, making Otis funny but never cruel or degrading. He brought warmth to a role that could have easily been mean-spirited, portraying alcoholism as more sad than sinful. Later, when the show aired in syndication, some networks chose to edit out Otis's scenes, believing they sent the wrong message. But most fans still remember him fondly, a reminder that Mayberry's charm came from understanding, not judgment. Hal Smith's ability to balance comedy and compassion made Otis unforgettable, and his personal integrity off-screen made the contrast all the more remarkable. If you ever rewatch The Andy Griffith Show closely, you'll notice something funny about Mayberry's tiny jail. It never really changed. The same cell, same cot, and even the same dented coffee cup appeared in episode after episode, year after year. The jail set was among the simplest on the lot, consisting of little more than a few props, a couple of chairs, and a barred door that rattled when it shut. The crew joked that it was Mayberry's most loyal citizen, because it barely needed maintenance and never caused trouble. It was also a symbol of the show's simplicity. Problems got solved in the same place, and the town's troublemakers often walked right back out the front door. Otis the drunk even treated the cell like a second home, wandering in voluntarily. That consistent, unchanging set became part of the show's rhythm, grounding viewers in familiarity. In a decade of fast social change, Mayberry's little jail was a place where nothing scary ever really happened. The coffee stayed warm, the doors always opened again, and even punishment came with a smile. The peaceful walk to the fishing hole that opens every episode of The Andy Griffith Show feels like pure North Carolina country life. But it wasn't filmed anywhere near the South. That famous path, pond, and whistle soundtrack were all created at Franklin Canyon Reservoir, a quiet park just a few miles from downtown Los Angeles. The crew chose it because of its perfect rural America look: rolling hills, clear water, and no visible signs of the city. The location captured everything people imagined Mayberry to be: tranquil, friendly, and timeless. Locals who visit the park today can still walk the same trail where Andy and young Opie strolled with their fishing poles, tossing a rock into the water before the music fades. Though filmed in California, it became the visual heartbeat of the fictional South. The opening sequence didn't just start each episode, it transported viewers to a simpler world before a single line was spoken. For many fans, that walk represents the show's soul, an invitation to slow down, breathe, and remember what really matters. A place may be fake, but the feeling it creates can last forever. Mayberry's entire communication system revolved around one unforgettable voice: Sarah, the unseen operator who connected every call. Whether Andy needed to reach Barney or Aunt Bee wanted to gossip, everyone in town went through Sarah. The show's single phone line became a running gag and a glimpse into the charm of small-town life before technology took over. You never saw Sarah, but her friendly patience made her feel like another neighbor living right off screen. Sometimes she'd chime in with advice or accidentally eavesdrop, adding to the humor. The old-fashioned wall-mounted phone with its long cord became as iconic as the sheriff's desk itself. The simplicity of that one line captured the show's theme perfectly, a connected community where everyone knew everyone else. There was no voicemail, no missed calls, no anonymity, just people talking and listening to one another. In today's world of constant notifications, that single crackling phone line feels almost magical. Sarah never got a face, but she became the voice of Mayberry's heartbeat, connecting not just phone calls, but people. Everyone recognizes the iconic whistle theme from The Andy Griffith Show, but few people know it originally had words. The theme, titled The Fishin' Hole, actually came with full lyrics written by Everett Sloan. To promote the show before its debut, Andy Griffith recorded a version where he sang the lyrics himself. The result was charming, simple, and very much in tune with the show's homespun tone. The lyrics talked about relaxing, going fishing, and leaving worries behind. Exactly what Mayberry represented. However, the network decided the whistled version worked better on television. The melody alone captured the easy pace and friendliness of small-town life without needing a single lyric. Griffith later said he didn't mind the change, joking that the whistle said it all. The vocal version never aired, but it became a collectible among fans once it resurfaced decades later. Hearing Andy sing it feels like stepping straight into Mayberry, slow, genuine, and kind. The theme remains one of the most beloved in television history, proving that sometimes the simplest sounds can say the most. Don Knotts' portrayal of Barney Fife wasn't just funny, it was historic. Over his 5 years on The Andy Griffith Show, Knotts won 5 Emmy Awards for Best Supporting Actor, one for every season he appeared. Few television actors before or since have matched that record. His nervous energy, rubber-faced expressions, and impeccable timing made Barney Fife a comedic masterpiece. What could have been a one-note role turned into something unforgettable thanks to Knotts' skill. He gave the character heart beneath the bluster, a man desperate to prove himself despite his flaws. Audiences didn't just laugh at Barney, they rooted for him. The Emmys were well-deserved, but Knotts remained humble, always crediting Andy Griffith for grounding the show with warmth. Griffith, in turn, often said Don was the funniest man he ever met. Together, they created television chemistry so perfect that critics still study it as a model of comedic partnership. The awards were just proof of what fans already knew. There was nobody like Don Knotts, and there never will be again. Aunt Bee's homemade pickles became a running joke in The Andy Griffith Show, remembered for being so terrible that Barney called them kerosene cucumbers. But the truth behind those jars was even funnier. The pickles weren't homemade at all. They were mass-produced store brands swapped in by the prop crew. The production team didn't have time to make real pickles for every take, so they filled reused jars with whatever was available at the grocery store. Frances Bavier played the scenes so sincerely that audiences believed Aunt Bee's kitchen had churned out those briny disasters. The episode, The Pickle Story, remains one of the show's most loved because it perfectly balanced humor and affection. It showed how even the best intentions can go hilariously wrong, and how love, not taste, was what mattered most in Mayberry. Behind the camera, everyone on set enjoyed the irony that something so artificial became such a heartfelt piece of television. Those fake pickles reminded viewers that imperfection could still be sweet and funny. Unlike many Hollywood productions, The Andy Griffith Show wasn't driven by ego or money. The cast, including Griffith himself, accepted salaries well below what other network stars were earning. For them, the value of the show wasn't in paychecks, but in purpose. They believed in its message of kindness, humor, and decency at a time when television was growing louder and more cynical. Andy Griffith led by example, refusing to chase higher rates even as the show became a massive hit. His quiet leadership set the tone for everyone else. Don Knotts, Frances Bavier, and Ron Howard all followed suit, focusing on quality rather than fame. The atmosphere on set reflected that selflessness, collaborative, calm, and focused on storytelling. That spirit gave The Andy Griffith Show its timeless heart. It wasn't just another sitcom. It was a reflection of how good people could work together to create something lasting. The cast's decision to choose meaning over money made Mayberry feel even more real, and audiences could sense that sincerity in every scene. Andy Griffith was not only the star of his own show, he was also one of the few television actors of his era with the foresight to secure ownership rights. When The Andy Griffith Show was nearing its end in 1968, the network was eager to continue the Mayberry legacy. Griffith, always business-savvy beneath his easygoing charm, made sure he would retain partial ownership and royalties for the spin-off Mayberry RFD. At the time, it was almost unheard of for actors to have that kind of control. Studios typically kept all profits and licensing rights. But Andy understood the value of Mayberry. He knew it wasn't just a show. It was a brand built on sincerity, community, and timeless humor. Mayberry RFD continued with many of the same characters, keeping the spirit of the town alive after Griffith's departure. His decision to negotiate royalties meant he benefited from its success both creatively and financially. The move quietly set a precedent for later performers who wanted more control over their work. It also showed that Andy Griffith wasn't just the wise sheriff he played, he was a man who understood how to protect what he built. His calm, humble demeanor may have defined him on screen, but behind the scenes he was every bit as shrewd as Hollywood's biggest power players. That smart decision ensured that Mayberry remained not just a beloved memory, but a lasting legacy he truly owned. If you thought the courthouse and streets of Mayberry looked oddly familiar, there's a reason. The same backlot used for The Andy Griffith Show became one of Hollywood's most famous filming locations, the Universal Studios lot in California. Decades later, that same sleepy town square was transformed into Hill Valley, the home of Marty McFly in Back to the Future, 1985. The courthouse that once hosted Sheriff Andy Taylor and Deputy Barney Fife's lighthearted law enforcement became the iconic clock tower struck by lightning in one of cinema's most memorable scenes. It's a striking example of how Hollywood reuses its sets, layering new stories over old ones while leaving hints of history behind. For The Andy Griffith Show, that courthouse represented fairness and community. For Back to the Future, it symbolized destiny and time itself. The streets stayed the same, but their stories evolved, showing how timeless settings can adapt to every generation. Even today, visitors who take studio tours can walk the same streets Andy and Opie once strolled, then look up at the clock tower where lightning changed Marty's life. It's a surreal collision of pop culture history, where two completely different worlds share the same small-town soul. In its own way, the set's longevity mirrors Mayberry itself, unchanging, nostalgic, and somehow always waiting for us to come home again. For more than a decade, Mayberry ruled television. The Andy Griffith Show and its successor, Mayberry RFD, were some of CBS's most successful series, simple, wholesome, and universally loved. Yet by the early 1970s, times were changing. The network launched what became known as the Rural Purge, a sweeping decision to cancel shows that portrayed small-town or country life, even if they were still popular. So, despite strong ratings, Mayberry's time quietly ended in 1971. Fans were stunned. The move marked the end of an era, not just for Mayberry, but for a generation of television that celebrated rural values and simplicity. For Andy Griffith, it was bittersweet. Mayberry had always represented kindness and community, things he felt the world still needed. The Rural Purge may have shifted television toward modern realism, but many viewers never stopped longing for the calm wisdom of a small-town sheriff and his neighbors. In hindsight, it wasn't just a programming change, it was the closing of America's most comforting storybook. Ron Howard wasn't the only member of his family to make a mark on The Andy Griffith Show. His father, Rance Howard, also appeared in several episodes, often playing background characters who added quiet authenticity to Mayberry's charm. Rance, a respected actor and writer, popped up as a farmer, a party guest, and even a friendly repairman. Never flashy, always believable. His appearances weren't the result of nepotism. Andy Griffith admired Rance's professionalism and natural acting style. He offered guidance without overshadowing Ron's budding talent, letting him find his rhythm as Opie Taylor. The Howards saw the show as more than work. It was a shared experience that shaped their lives and careers. Ron later credited his father for teaching him discipline and respect for storytelling, lessons that guided his evolution from child actor to acclaimed director. If you look closely at Mayberry's background scenes, you can spot Rance Howard's face in several moments, quietly contributing to the illusion of a real, lived-in town. Their presence reflected what the Andy Griffith Show stood for all along: family, hard work, and the quiet beauty of doing things with heart. In Mayberry, time stood still, and that was exactly the way audiences liked it. Over 8 seasons of the Andy Griffith Show, no one ever seemed to get older. Andy remained the same calm, capable sheriff. Opie stayed the curious little boy, and Aunt Bee never showed an extra gray hair. This creative choice wasn't an oversight. It was intentional. The producers wanted the show to feel timeless, free from the passing years or the worries of the outside world. That lack of aging added to its nostalgic charm. It gave viewers an escape from their own fast-changing lives. Even when the world outside was full of upheaval, civil rights marches, wars, and political unrest, Andy's porch light always glowed the same. It became a place where people could return week after week and know exactly what to expect: kindness, humor, and peace. The faces never change, the laughter never fades, and Mayberry remains frozen in its perfect simplicity, a moment in time that audiences will never want to leave. So before you head back down Mayberry's Main Street, tell us which fact surprised you most, then tap like, hit subscribe, and share your favorite Mayberry memory in the comments so we can keep the spirit of this timeless town alive together.